If you're a pop culture junkie who loves TV, film, music, comedy, and other really important stuff, then you've come to the right place. Get ready and settle in for Classic Conversations, the best pop culture interviews in the world. That's right, we circled the globe so you don't have to. If you're ready to be the king of the water cooler, then you're ready for Classic Conversations with your host, Jeff Dwoskin.
All right, Terry, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. You get the show going each and every week, and this week was no exception. Welcome, everybody, to episode 228 of Classic Conversations. As always, I am your host, Jeff Dwoskin. Great to have you back for what's sure to be the most classic insider edition of Classic Conversations to date. We're going behind the scenes with Ian Gurvitz. Ian was the showrunner of Wings and Becker, and his career is just amazing. And he's sharing a ton of stories with us in just a few seconds. And in these few seconds, I have a story. Well, here's a story of episode 226 with Christopher Knight, Peter Brady. Don't miss that amazing episode. But right now, Ian, author of Hello, Lied the Agent, and other bullshit you hear as a Hollywood TV writer, is going to share all the ups and downs of navigating Hollywood. Enjoy. All right, everyone, my next guest has spent decades in Hollywood. He's written on Frasier, The Wonder Years, Tony Danza's show, TV writer, executive producer for Wings and Becker. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Ian Gurvitz. Whoa.
Hey.
Hey, well, thanks for hanging with me on my podcast.
Sure.
So you've got a rich Hollywood history. How did you get so obsessed with, and I know you in your book you talk about an immediate obsession with television at an early age, but how did that lead to actually becoming part of the Hollywood system?
It was not a straight line. I had no idea what I was doing in college. I studied philosophy. I went for a master's in religion. I lived out of the country in Japan for a year. Came back to New York, had no idea what I was going to do. Just hit the city, started looking for jobs. But at the same time, my brother was out here and was making inroads as a manager. So he got some comics and then said, why don't you write for him? So I started writing jokes and made the connection with the show. Variety show, why don't you do these things? And then just, say yes to everything. Say yes, figure it out. So while I was working, normal 9-to-5 jobs in publishing and advertising, I was working nights, weekends, banging out anything I could think of. Then he had connections on shows, so I started writing specs, send them out, and I would fly out to LA on little search and destroy missions, which was the way I could do it at the time. Ultimately, it was a folly because you got to be there or here to do this, which is what he said. So eventually wrote a feature that's optioned to the guys who produced Jaws and The Sting, Zanuck Brown, which was like, holy crap, a sale.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. So then it came out for the summer and did a rewrite, found a director, started getting the feel for the place, and then basic Hollywood story, studio goes into turnaround. So there's, set sold, project goes into turnaround, goodbye. But in the meantime, I had pitched a rewrite on a movie. And because my brother was hooked up with the guy who was running the studio at the time, said, just wrap it into an overall deal. So they said, yeah, you're good for a year. And that was it. Packed up the family and the cat, Beverly Hillbillies. We're going out.
Awesome.
And yeah, that landed in Beverly Hills and started getting the feel of the place. Led right into the first Writers Guild strike, which was hilarious.
Great timing.
Yes, excellent timing. But luckily, I only lost a little bit. But wrote a spec while I was there that landed on the top of somebody's desk, and they had gotten a show picked up, looking for what was then called a baby writer, and had a meeting, went on another show.
And a spec is when you decide, I'm just going to write an episode of Seinfeld, but then no one asked you to do it. You just... No,
it was a calling card. I mean, there was a time here that there were more Seinfeld specs than there were people in Los Angeles, but that was the show to do. I did one of those. I did whatever I felt I could write. It's just to show that you can hear the voices of a certain show and that you've got some ability that gets you in the room. These days, I don't think writing specs for existing shows is as big as original material. That's prize. People want to hear what your voice is.
Now people want an original voice.
Yeah.
They may be getting tired of reboots and remakes.
Yeah. I mean, I've been on shows where you staff up and the floor is covered in scripts and you can't read one more spec. So yeah, you want to read somebody, see where their head is, see who they are. Plus TV has gotten so good that they're looking for original ideas, original voices. Not everything can be IP.
So writing was your inroad then?
Yeah. Writing gets you in the door. Then you start learning what producing is. You learn editing, you learn casting, you learn how to write with a mind toward a budget. I can fantasize anything, but we can't afford to do that. So is there another way around it? You learn how to work in a room. You learn how to take notes, which sucks. I remember the first script I wrote, I got notes and I said I felt like I'd been vivisected because I didn't know the experience. So you get notes, you tear it apart, you learn how to do that. You know, you write, you're in your own head. You like what you've done. You feel this is good. Then someone else looks at it and goes, hey, yeah, no, change it. I went on a show once, did my first draft, and basically they called me in a room and said, yeah, run this through the typewriter one more time, which was basically their way of saying, do it over. And that's how you learn. Shows are like grad school in production. Instead, you learn.
How did you learn to do the writing? I mean, was this something did you have to teach yourself that? I mean, because, you have to write a script in a certain way, right? And
yeah, you got to follow format, but I got my hands on scripts, read it, so at least I can mimic the format. And then you watch the show, you listen to the rhythms of it. You try to get a good story, something that will intrigue people, and mimicry. If nobody says you're doing it wrong, then you're doing something right. If it gets you in some doors, you go, all right, I think I can at least do this well enough to keep doing it. And every script you write is a learning experience. Everyone comes out perfect. You put it in a drawer, you look at it a month later, it's crap. You fall in love with stuff. You go, this has to get made. This is brilliant. 6 months down the road, it runs out of gas, write something else. You fall in love, then you move on. And if it lands, then great. You fall deep in love with that one.
So don't fall in love with love. That's one of the keys of success there.
You have to love it while you're doing it. Then when you send it out, you got to think this is great. This is going to get attention, and you never know what's going to come back. Yeah, this is it's okay. Yeah, we've got one like it. The other thing you learn as you go is pitching. If you want to write, and if you can staff on shows if you're lucky forever. But if you've got things you want to say or write about, you've got to figure out how to do that. You have to go in a room and learn how to pitch and not bore the hell out of people, and realize that they've heard 100 pitches in a day. They know exactly what they want. You've got to be confident. You've got to sell, which I don't think is necessarily it's not part of a writer's head. I don't think, you got to somehow channel the passion you have to put it on the page, which is fun. You're alone. There's no wrong way. It's all you. Then you got to go put on your tap shoes and, sell it to strangers who they may love it. They may have 10 like it in development. They may want nothing like it, or they may say it's brilliant. I've had crappy pitches I've sold in rooms, and great pitches that you go, they passed. Can't figure out a rhyme or reason to it sometimes.
Is a lot of times just whatever the atmosphere is at a particular time. They're really into body swap movies, or they're really into... Yeah. I mean, at one, Friends was a great show, but I think it ruined development for about 15 years because all they did, at least on network TV, was try to clone 6 funny Caucasians living together. And they kept trying to clone that show. Some of them got on the air. None of them really worked because you were just trying to imitate something, And from a casting point of view, most of those actors were on hundreds of failed pilots. Right people, right time. I mean, I think Lisa Kudrow had been recently fired from the Frasier pilot at the last second. Yeah, she was supposed to be
Roz,
right?
But yeah, Perry Gilpin, I think they knew from Wings because she did an episode of that, so she was a good go-to. But that's how capricious this can be.
In your book, Hello, Lie the Agent, and other bullshit from a Hollywood TV writer, you talk about the execution. You talk about it in the terms of a lot of times, like people talk about how, they stole this idea, but because there can be at some time, like when there was like 3 Robin Hood movies all of a sudden,
right?
Or whatever, right? I loved how you were talked about how it's the ultimate execution of it. It's never the idea, it's how they actually bring it to life. I
mean, I think the example I use were all these body swap movies between the adult and the kid. Freaky Friday, was it 19 again? There were a handful. They keep remaking this premise over and over, but Big was completely unique. Not exactly the same premise, not exactly the same way in, but because Tom Hanks brought so much warmth and pathos to that character, it wasn't a gimmick. It wasn't just let's switch bodies and, oh my God, I'm an adult. What do I do now? That kind of stuff. There was a real heart to it. There was an intelligence to it. So that's execution. Like I said, people tried to mimic Friends and Seinfeld for years. Couldn't do it.
One of the great lines in the book was, when it's done right, it's Seinfeld. Sorry, it just cracked me up when I read it. When it's done right, it's Seinfeld. And when it's not, it's the single guy.
Yeah, they took a shot. But it's not the world. It's not, let's just throw a bunch of funny, quirky people. You couldn't do Seinfeld. That was Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld. Put them two together. And that was a fluke as well. It got picked up for like 6 shows. Someone in, I think, Variety loaned their budget so they could keep making them. It was the Seinfeld Chronicles.
Right. And Elaine wasn't even in the original ones.
Yeah. And shows very rarely come out fully formed. Cheers, I think, was last in the ratings for a good long time.
Yeah, Cheers is one of those stories where they always talk about how it almost got canceled and then went on to become one of the best sitcoms ever.
Yeah. That book I wrote when I was working in half hour, and it came out of my frustration because to me, it's just a play with 3 walls and 4 cameras. It doesn't have to be stupid. Norman Lear proved that. He revolutionized television when you consider the world he came out of. And then to pitch, and they shot like 3 pilots of that with different casts and different configurations. The first time I saw that show, it was mind-blowing. I couldn't believe this was on television, and I looked at that and that's what I want to try to do.
Yeah, the Norman Lear shows are incredible. Archie and On the Family. And everyone always says, oh, you couldn't make them today, just because with the dialogue and the way they approach subjects.
I've tried. A lot of people have probably gone in and pitched it. I've tried. I spec'd it out, wanted to, because the times are no less volatile. In fact, you could make the case they're more volatile right now. Why not put that up? But what I've heard from a bunch of sources is that they're just looking for escapism, fantasy, which I understand the logic behind it, but why exclusively? That show proved that people will respond to a show that reflects their reality. And obviously cable's gone way past that, and streaming as well. But I think network is still in that other world.
Why do you think network dumbs it down so much?
Advertiser base. They don't want to piss off advertisers. They don't want to piss off the general public. They're still slaves to that. Cable and streaming is subscribers. So the business model is to do something as daring as you possibly can. That's the idea. That's the way, have you seen this show? No, where is it? It's on Hulu. I don't have that. I want to see it. I better get it.
Right. There's so much now. There's so many different places. It makes it harder to find stuff as well. You can have this brilliant stuff. Some of us were talking the other day, I think it was a show called Homecoming. I think it's on Apple. Mm-hmm. Julia Roberts was in it. 10 episodes of it. And none of us had heard of it.
Yeah, it doesn't, the business model is not necessarily 100 episodes in syndication, get that big check at the end. Now you're doing 8, 10 a year, and everyone has got to be great to get people to talk about it. Word of mouth, more subscribers. There's some shows I punted down, you hear people talk about it, watch the pilot, get roped in, watch 2 seasons. Got COVID a few months ago and binged all of Ozark.
So did I.
Yeah, really?
Oh, God, yeah. Not because of COVID. I didn't have COVID. I'm sorry. I hope you're feeling better. But
oh, yeah. It's in the past. Did it. Got it over with. Had to pass that time somehow.
Yeah, my wife and I, we watched Ozark also, yeah.
Yeah, I just went in and would write a little bit, hang out in the backyard, binge an episode or 2, do something else, go back. It was a way to get through that. Yeah, 10 days.
I loved it. Did you love it? I loved it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I kept going.
It was hard. It was hard to watch. I thought it was, in the sense that it was a very draining show.
Yes,
but
it was.
You can't stop watching it. It was so good. It was so good. They were all so good. Everyone on that show, the acting, was insane. Sorry to interrupt. Have to take a quick break. Not a break long enough for you to run off and watch Ozark yourself. But I do want to quickly thank everyone for their support of the sponsors. When you support the sponsors, you're supporting us here at Classic Conversations, and that's how we keep the lights on. And now more Hollywood Inside Scoop with Ian Gurvitz. All right, so that was cool. I loved in your book too, you kind of had this thread of Arrested Development. Speaking of like a highbrow or at least a high intelligence show versus and its kind of eventual crash, but or cancellation rather. Why do you think shows like that struggle so much? Like, is it just because it takes too much effort to watch them? I mean, literally, you have to watch.
Yeah, showrunners who try to push boundaries are going to run up against brick walls. There's you can't do that until you prove yourself, until something is a success. And then suddenly you're not getting any notes anymore. And the flip side of that is once you stop getting notes, sometimes people can just go so far because nobody can tell them what to do. I did an indie movie on my own about 15 years ago, coming out because I had written a spec pilot, but not a spec pilot, assignment pilot for CBS. I really wanted to do it.
LA Blues?
No, yeah, that was the movie. But it started as a CBS pilot, just about guys and the way they really talk to each other. Put my heart into it, and then they passed, and I got pissed off. So I blew it out into a movie, and I said, I'm going to do this. So I got some people together and said, let's try, and then built little fail safes along the way. If we can't find the time, we won't do it. I'll pull the plug. If we can't cast it, I'll pull the plug. And then eventually we cast it. So that was a chance. What I learned from that is that the best thing about that experience was that you're your own boss and nobody can tell you what to do. And the worst thing was that you're your own boss and nobody can tell you what to do. So I learned both lessons.
So that was with David Foley.
Yeah, Dave Foley, Anthony Michael Hall, George Wendt. Put some good people together. It was fun. It was, I jumped off a cliff and said I'd figure it out on the way down. And I did.
That's awesome. How come you haven't written and done any more movies? Is that just not a direction you want to go in, or?
I think you've got to be seized. I've written some specs since then, but you've got to be so seized that I'll spend a year doing this because I have to write this. I mean, I think with spec work, it's not, you can do it from commerce. Everybody's buying, look at Stranger Things. I'm going to write one of those. You can write it from that point of view, but to spend that much time on a project, I think you've got to be in love with what you're writing to get to the first draft. Do it in silence, put it away, don't show it to anybody, look at it again, groan about, oh God, I thought this was great, it's crap, or it's flawed, now I got to fix this. But then if you get it out, one thing I did recently, got it to a producer and fine, we were going to do it. I went through about 10 rounds of notes with them. We love what you've done, it's getting better. Now let's look at this again. And it just on and on and on. Finally got it to the point where, fine, we'll take it out. They tried to package it. Then we hit COVID.
Damn COVID.
It's like, languished, died. So that's what I meant. You fall in love with something and then you just learn, okay, I got to fall out of love with this, write something else, which is the best way to fall out of love with it.
So in terms of falling in love, Wings. What was your relationship with Wings? I mean, in terms of, you must have loved it then, right? You were there a long time.
Okay, I did. I had a blast on the show. I went in for the meeting. They were looking for just another voice in the room for like 6 episodes. And I had seen about half an episode. And I knew that it was Tim Daly and Steven Weber. And they were brothers and there was an airline. And I tap danced my way through that interview. Something fierce. And got the gig. And they figured, we'll see how it goes in 6 shows. And if not, see you later. But I figured out how to work in the room, did my homework, so I was ready, and stayed for 6 years until the end, which was a lot of fun. We just laughed a lot on that show.
Oh, it's a hilarious show. And the cast was amazing. And that's where Thomas Hayden Church, Tony Shalhoub, Tim Daly and Steve Weber, Crystal Bernard.
Crystal, Amy Yazbek, all gone on to do real good things. We had fun. You just look at it and go, I'm enjoying this show. I like the people I work with. I like the people on stage. The product is fun. We're having a good time. We're getting picked up. Where's the bed? Even though at the same time, I was still writing at night.
You wrote a bunch of episodes of Wings, right? You're like 16
about 15, 16. Yeah, co-wrote some. But everyone you write eventually goes through the meat grinder. So by the time you get to the table, you may not recognize a word of what you wrote. But it's sort of a relay race where you hand it off to the next person and then the room takes it over. So you watch your favorite. The one thing that's for sure is that the one joke you are in love with will never make it.
And the one you
look at
hate,
it,
everyone thinks hilarious, right?
yeah, but you look at it like I love that joke, and it's like a child learning to walk. It's going to make it to the table. Is it going to make it through the rewrite? Is it going to make it through the week's rehearsal? Is it going to make it on stage? Will it get a laugh? Is it going to make it through the final cut? The chances of that happening were slim. But then you surrender to the process. Here's the script. Let's go. You learn how to eat it. You learn how to sit through a page one rewrite of your own stuff, which is a real blast. It's another reason. It's another reason to have your own show. For better or worse, it's your call.
In your book, you talk a lot about bringing something from birth through the whole process. So, and Wings, you came into a already established show.
Yes.
So even an established show, I'm assuming that those 15, 16 episodes you wrote over those six would have been maybe over those 6 years.
Yeah, over the 6 years, 3 a year.
A few years into that, or not you, but just anyone, as they're writing, if they've been there for years also, is it just as an extensive a rewrite? I mean, is it still like, or is it some point you got, oh, well, he's writing this one, so this one's probably not going to get torn apart as much?
Most of them, 75, 80%. You could make a plea. Can I at least hear that joke? Can I see that? Sometimes you'd get it. I remember there was a scene I wrote, and it was just like a half a page piece, but it was an emotional scene. And that I remember stayed pretty much the way I had it. Even if it was 4 or 6 lines, the moment I wanted to show made it all the way through. So you take your victories where you can get them. But it's teamwork.
So you kind of have to take solace and just feel good about the fact that you may have written a joke.
Yes.
And then I read Ian's joke and I read, no, this is what it's going to be. But you just go, well, I inspired Jeff to do that. So.
Yeah. And the fact is that a room full of people, they're going to come up with more than you did alone in a room. Even though you break the story as a group, you note the outline as a group, you note the script as a group. Then you go off, maybe you write another draft. So you're alone, you bring it back and go, here's the sacrificial lamb. Go ahead. Joke was fine. Get out your coat hangers.
What year did you join? What season?
92.
I mean, was that season? Was Tony Shalhoub already in it?
Oh, yeah. Tony was there from the beginning.
I thought Tony joined like season 3. I thought.
Did he? I thought he was there from trying to remember.
I thought that he was introduced season 3.
Oh, maybe yes. They introduced his character. Like, yeah, you're right.
And then Thomas Hayden Church left for his own show. I think.
Yes, Ned and Stacy.
Yeah. So all right. So maybe that's a better one then. So Thomas would have left, right? So
I was there. Yeah, right, I was there.
That's what I'm saying. All right. So that was something that you had to kind of deal with, a major character leaving and filling that gap.
Yeah, we hired another actor. I think his name was Brian Howe. He was good, but you couldn't duplicate what Tommy did. I mean, playing the dumb character in a show is tough, but he brought a believability to it. So it's tough to replicate. And you can always go in another direction, but you sort of need, the show organically had that feel to it. You needed that character to perform that function. So it's always tough.
Cheers did a good job, I think, when Coach passed away.
Cheers, yes, they did an excellent job. They went a completely different way, though.
Right.
With Woody.
Do you have any cool stories from the set of Wings before we move on? Any like must share?
Oh God, there were so many I can't share.
Can't share?
Yeah.
I loved Wings, and I hadn't seen it in so long. I rewatched the pilot, which I know you weren't there yet, but yeah, I gotta say it was one of the best first episodes of a show. I mean, I was watching it. It was like, I was laughing. I mean, sometimes it's like you watch the, it takes a little bit. It's there, but the full rhythm, it takes a little bit. But like not to use the term took off, but
most pilots, if you work on it from the beginning, you think we've got this in the pilot, and you look back 2 years later and go, what the hell were we thinking? My God, that was so amateurish. But if you can capture those characters, have it work, is it funny? Is it smart? Then you get picked up, so you're given the chance to develop it.
Right. Actually, Wings was created by 3 of the folks from Cheers, who then also created Frasier, right?
Yes, Casey Angel Lee.
Yeah.
And then they left to do Frasier at one point and handed it off to other people. They went on to do other things, handed it off to three of us, and we were in it, I guess, for a few years till the end.
So executive producer, is that like showrunner?
Same thing.
Same thing. Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
It's either one person. At the end of Wings, it was 3 of us, and we sort of have different responsibilities. But yeah, it's whoever has the final say. Usually the creator of the show or someone who inherits it.
The other show that I'm assuming you've loved because you were there for a long while, Becker.
Yeah. That I had a lot of fun on. And that was Dave Hackle, who I met on Wings, went off to do another show, lasted a short time, and then sent me the pilot for that and said, what do you think? And I loved it because the main character was such a amusing asshole. But being a doctor, it took the curse off it. I thought it was a great take on things. So I went to that from before the pilot. We did a test read because they got Ted at least interested, but he wasn't sure because it was such a departure from Sam. And then I think he did a show with his wife called Ink that didn't fly. So he wasn't sure which way to go. So they did a test read with these other actors, and he sort of tried the part on for size, and it worked enough for him to commit. Then they cast it for real. So yeah, I was there from before the beginning.
Is that a more enriching experience when you're there from birth?
Yeah, because you feel part of something. The world is open to you. Where do we want to take this character? What could happen? What's interesting? What's an interesting arc? There was a little bit of a romantic thing.
Right, with Terry.
With Terry, little will they or won't they? So that was working, but we didn't want to make that the focus of the show. We did shows that hit on religion, death. I mean, for what network TV was at the time, I think it was not necessarily dark, but interesting, more adult. So that's what I liked about that show at the time.
How was Ted Danson to work with?
The best, just fantastic. So funny, professional, was just like a spiritual leader on stage. If a joke didn't work, he would try it. And his thing was, I'm not sure if I'm doing this right, as opposed to, what you can hear is, I hate this joke. I hate this line. Why are we doing this? Just would make everything work. And so he was just a joy.
It's awesome. Everyone always talks about like Betty White having like 10 series or 9 series.
Yes.
And Sharon Glass has like, 8 or 9 but Ted Danson's had almost a dozen,
Yep.
I think. 1, 2.
Yeah. Good Place.
It's like Cheers, Ink, Help Me Help You, Damages, Bored to Death, 2 CSIs, Fargo, The Good Place, Curb Your Enthusiasm, if you want to count. He's been in enough of those.
Yeah.
I think it counts. Mr. Mayor and Becker.
Yeah.
If I'm not missing any, but
yeah, he's just good.
Yeah,
he's solid and a pleasure to work with. So
yeah, and then he had a whole run on the Orville as well. He was like a guest, but like he was on 6 of the characters.
Yeah, he can pretty much do anything. So it was a blast to write for him because you knew you had somebody who could deliver, and you could go quiet. You could go for smarter moments, which I liked. I thought the show, there was room to do that. Let's just go for a moment where it's quiet, it's serious. I directed the second to last episode of the show, which was a 9/11 episode. I don't think anybody else on network TV was doing anything on that subject, but we just went at it. After years of just doing editing and watching the quad on stage, I asked if I could get a shot to direct the joke. Everybody wants to do it, but I figured, why not speak up now? You'll never get a chance. So same thing. I jumped off the cliff and figured it out on the way down after watching people do it well for 10 years. And so I got through it with a lot of help, a lot of backup, but yeah, it was fun. But we got to do some quiet moments as well. So, and particularly since David Angel, friend of ours, one of the co-creators of Wings and Frasier, was on that first plane, it had a little extra something to it.
Oh, right. Had an extra meaning. Right.
Yeah.
So sorry about that. After Becker, was it the Exes that you went to?
Yeah. Same thing. I worked on the pilot, consulted a few days, before working on the script. It was a guy I knew from Wings, Mark Reisman, and came up with this show. And, you just go in and you do a few days, punch up whatever you can do. And then it got picked up. That was fun in its own way. Good actors, simple situation. It was sort of back to doing Wings in some respect.
Yeah, it was like a collection of like greatest hits actors from a bunch of different shows.
Yeah, that's what that's what Friends was at the time.
Right, yeah.
So it was more of a garage sale of people who would come off of busted pilots.
Right. Well, this had Wayne Knight from Donald Faison, Kristen Johnson.
Yeah, Kristen's hilarious.
Yeah, she's hilarious from Third Rock, and then Too Funny.
And Mom since.
Awesome. So, it was interesting in your book. One of the things that I read, one of the lines that stuck out to me. TV is based on the presumption of failure.
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at it as if you look at development as R&D, 99.9% of the pilots they order don't make it. Most of the shows that get picked up don't make it past year 1 or year 2. I mean, this was at the time, this was network TV with that business model. So most of the expertise that people had would go into making something that would not succeed. And it always struck me, and I think I put this in the book, if your R&D department has such a crappy track record, why don't you just hand out pilots to 10 writers who you think have a vision, a voice, do it, and tell them, do what you want. Deliver me the script, deliver me the show, however much control you would be willing to relinquish. The results couldn't possibly be worse than all that brain power and expertise collaborating to make a failure. So
yeah, the numbers that you were running down, it was like 500 a year picked up at script, and then that gets whittled down to 120, and then 35 to series, and then maybe 2 go to the distance, maybe 2.
Yeah, and then they start all over again. So, like I said, if you looked at it just from this is R&D in a factory or a lab, with that kind of failure rate, wouldn't you at least take a shot at trying to another business model instead of noting people to death and trying to bend it into a cookie cutter type show? Give people their heads. See what you come up with.
Are you familiar with at all how they do it now with like the HBOs and stuff like that? Like of every House of Dragons that come out, is it that high, or do they have a higher success ratio?
They can put on whatever they want to put on. They can give shows a chance. If you're on a streaming platform, it's not like a network schedule where you've got Thursday night at 8, 8:30, 9, 9:30. It's not like prime time when we only have a limited amount of slots. So we better be popular because we need the advertising dollars. You can't sacrifice. It's like building, a restaurant in a crappy location or a crappy restaurant in a good location.
Yeah, you're right. That makes perfect sense.
Right. But with cable and I guess more with streaming, you can just put on as many shows as you want, see what people like. So the business model has changed, which I think from a creative point of view is a good thing. TV has gotten great, whereas movies have become excuses to sell popcorn.
Yeah, I love where TV has gone. And I gotta say, like, maybe it's just because I'm older now, but the idea of going to a movie, when you start to like run the numbers.
Yeah.
2-hour movie. and like you're gone for that means you're gone for like 3-4 hours total. It's like, that's a lot a day. And then it'd be a shitty movie or something like that.
I mean, I took my son to see movies. We would go sometimes during COVID. We were the only people in the theaters, the only people, 300 empty seats and us. And if it was one of his cartoon movies, I bring earbuds and I listen to podcasts and he gets off on the movie.
What is the best idea that you kind of saw that either didn't get produced or was produced and then just did not make it? Like, there's no rhyme or reason, but this would have gone on to be amazing. Just in your opinion, I mean. I'm
trying to remember that shows, because usually if there's something I like, I mean, is it cable or
anything? I'm just curious, like, because when you're talking about like the 500 shows that go through the process, the meat grinder, there has to be ones that they're like, this is it. Like maybe somebody was like, the single guy is going to do it.
No, I mean,
I don't mean that one, but
you know what I remember more of the pilots that I saw that you looked at it and go, this is running for 10 years. The things that stick in my mind are more those shows that came out almost fully formed.
Okay, so which ones of those did you see and you went, this is it, they nailed it?
Malcolm in the Middle. I mean, we used to do this thing in the room, which we called Writer's Christmas. You get all the pilots that have been shot that year and you have lunch and you put them in and you trash them. I can't believe this got picked up. I can't believe this went to pilot. I can't believe this. And then you'd see one where you go, oh crap, this is good. And it would bring a silence to the room. One of those was Malcolm in the Middle. That was just so perfect.
Sorry to interrupt. Don't run off and watch Malcolm in the Middle just yet. There's more TV suggestions in this episode than sometimes in a Crossing the Streams episode, huh? Anyway, we'll be right back. And we're back with Ian Gurvitz. He is about to remember a Wings story to share with me.
Oh, actually, you reminded me. You asked me about a Wings story.
Right.
I remember one. It was a late night rewrite and we were stuck there. You order pizza and Chinese food and you're rewriting till all hours of the night. And one of the B stories we were working on was something to do with Steven Weber's character having a piece of a baby blanket. It was his lucky charm. He couldn't fly without it. And it was so, a silly little B story. But we couldn't figure out whether it was the last beat. So we took a break and somebody brought in a tape of the Seinfeld contest episode, which was the masturbation show.
Sure. I'm out.
We watched that during dinner. And after it was over, this silence just crept into the room and everybody looked at each other and go, all right, who wants to get back to that blanket story? Because this was so good and it was network TV. And at least I did it. I know a lot of other people felt, shit, why can't we do something like this? And the reason is he just did it. I imagine he had the clout at that point to pull off that episode. But that was one story I remember from the room where you go, I like what we're doing. I'm having fun doing what we're doing. I like getting to work. I love coming in. It's not work to me. It's all fun, but damn, that watching that, and it's like, that took your heart out.
Does it take your heart out for a second? Then does it kind of re-energize the room and go, all right, the bar just got raised. Let's go.
Yeah, it was a catalyst to go back to your own work, what you do at night, what you do on the weekends, going, okay, there is an avenue. There's a road to do something that you think might be better than this, and to try to take it into a meeting and try to pitch it, or just screw it, I'll spec it and see if I can sell it. So yeah, it was soul killing and inspiring at the same time.
Well, I will say, if this will make you feel better, and if you ever have a Wings reunion, feel free to share. My daughter carries around her blanket from when she was a kid, her Baba, and it's very, very important to her. So her reaction would have been like, why is this a B story? This should be the main story. So I know that story would resonate with her, and that would have been very, very important, more so than the contest.
Yes, obviously. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it was a relatable story. It was touching. It was sweet. And Steven Weber can do most anything and could pull it off. But it was just that moment of, ooh, look what they just did. Bar just got raised.
You just watched Ozark. Before that, we rewatched The Sopranos.
Yeah.
Tim Daly, his run in that was like,
great character.
Really good. Really good.
Yes, the Hollywood writer.
Yep.
With a problem. Yeah, I've rewatched a lot of that. I did not watch the sequel to it.
Somehow, the movie, the prequel movie?
Yeah, I could. It
was okay.
Yeah.
I tried to watch it before rewatching The Sopranos, and I had to turn it off. And then after we finished The Sopranos, we went back and watched I think it was Many Saints in Newark, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And it was better, but it was like one of those things where I don't love prequels. I call them like history movies, like his home movies. Yeah. Where everything then has to butt up appropriately to where the story is. That's why I hated all the Star Wars prequels. It's like, really, Anakin made C-3PO, all the Stormtroopers. Like everything I said, it didn't have to, it just go forward.
Yeah. I don't know. Not enough of it crept out. It felt like, your first date after a marriage splits up, or after a great marriage ends, and this is your first date, and God, am I ever able to do this? So I never watched it.
Well, you got a couple Ray Liotta performances in that one. It might have just been better if he just made a mob movie and just kind of used that as the premise, and it just kind of went original with it. But yeah, it's like, okay, Tony, and now he knows Carmela.
Yeah, it was sort of like Muppet Babies a little bit.
Soprano Babies.
Yes. But I wanted to watch it, but you hear enough things, you see enough, then you go, well, I don't have the time. Somehow it's not jumping out.
What are your thoughts on laugh tracks?
It's a funny concept because for half-hour shows that are done in front of an audience, that thing on Cheers they always had? Mm-hmm. Cheers is shot before a live studio audience. That was to tell the audience watching it that these are real laughs. It's a real audience. It's genuine laughter. But in editing, there were times where you go, this joke, they laughed too much. They were like on helium. They were just giddy. So take it down. On the other hand, this joke should have gotten a laugh and it didn't. They were too stupid. They didn't get it. Put it in. So it's mostly to even it out in editing, but the rap that sitcoms got was, there's a laugh track, meaning none of it was earned, which wasn't the case. Although I've been on other shows more recently that are half hour, but no audience, where they actually hired like 20 or 30 laughers to sit behind and almost conduct them like an orchestra, give this a hotter laugh, give this more, partially to give the actors a sense of timing, partially to have laughs to edit. So it didn't all sound like the same sweetened laugh track. So it's sort of a myth and a reality at the same time.
Got it.
What I didn't like about it was that it went along with that concept that sitcoms are stupid because they have to be, which my take was, yeah, a lot of sitcoms are stupid, but they don't have to be. This form can be smarter.
Right. There's clips you find on YouTube where they took the laugh track out and then it's not as funny.
Yeah. Well, it's, it's like rehearsals for a play. There's no audience there.
Okay. So you mentioned like when you watched Malcolm in the Middle, you're like, oh, boom, right?
Yeah.
Can you think of like one of those shows where would you guys get together and go, oh, damn, they turned that around. Like this one's going to bomb. This one ain't going to make it 10 years. But somehow they just made whatever adjustment and it kept going.
I mean, look, in the beginning, Seinfeld was one of those where it sort of had the germ of an idea, but it was sort of clunky. So, but they found their voice and they were allowed to find their voice. I can't remember too many pilots where they came out and it was okay, but then it just took off.
Do you think that's one of the problems these days is nobody's allowed to find their voice? Like if Seinfeld came out today, would it have even lasted more than an episode?
On network, no, but TV has eclipsed. At that point, it was so unique when it was up and running. It was self-referential. They did episodes about pitching a show about nothing. So it got a little meta. They did the contest episode. And it's strange because those people were, in some respects, in different. Jerry's reality, Jerry and George and Elaine were in one reality. Kramer was from another planet. An exaggeration, I guess, of a guy they knew in New York. Wayne's character, this, almost sinister mailman, from a slightly different place, exaggerated, but yet on the whole, it worked. It always felt like it was their POV on the world around them, and it was fun to be. I think they shot it at Radford, sort of walk New York Street, go, oh yeah, that's what they did this and that's what they did that.
Seinfeld is, I can't think of a show where it was literally appointment television. One, because taping wasn't probably as easy back then, but also was everyone literally watched it. And I remember in college watching it and my phone would ring once during the episode. And I'm like, yeah, who would do this?
Yes. Do not call me between this time and this time.
9 and 9:30, it's sacred time. It's like being in temple. It's like, you don't get that as sometimes maybe like the new, like Game of Thrones maybe was, everyone would watch it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of, in your book, you talk about a show that HBO announced that you had pitched them, but you weren't involved.
Which one was that?
It was something about a show. I think it was Reporters in Baghdad.
Yeah. That was weird. I was working with Gary Hart, who was the president of Paramount, and then got a deal at the studio. And it started where we had a phone meeting with some actor or comic, try to figure out, can we figure out what they want to do? And the call was okay, but I don't think we landed anywhere. But somehow it led to, I don't know why, on the walk back to my office, I don't know how, but the idea of war reporters in Baghdad. I read an article where they had all hung out at this hotel. And it was intriguing, it was sort of MASH, but with reporters. And somehow I kept researching it and I got a hold of some guy who had paid his way with donations there. So he was in Baghdad and I was in my office at Paramount asking him what the hell goes on? What is it like? What do you do? Just peppering him and writing. I think I wrote my notes on a lunch menu because I couldn't find any paper. And it was so fascinating that I spec'd out the pilot for it, showed it to Gary and he liked it. So we went to NBC one afternoon and we left. He said, he called right away, let's go to ABC and pitch this. And they both passed. So I wanted to try Showtime. I thought it was a great idea. It was one of those where you have passion for it and a script to back it up. And I sold my heart out in that room. And at halfway through, I could see the assistant was taking notes and she put down her pencil. And I looked over at that and go, all right, I'm dead. And as it turned out, that was we've got one like it in development, or it's too close. Yeah, that's a show I would have loved to have explored. A world I knew nothing about. So you tried to research it and get it real, but yet get it funny enough. So, I looked at MASH and go, this can be done. And I don't think I ever saw anybody produce that show. But if it gets stuck in development hell, where good ideas go to die. So you fall in love with it, sell your ass off, If it works, great. If it doesn't, move on.
Is there any other ones of yours that you were in love with that you can think of that you just can't believe didn't make it somewhere?
One I did recently, I figured I'd try my hand at a murder mystery, and that was a little bit commerce based. You go, well, they're selling, so let me see if I can figure one out. And it's tough because when you're alone trying to write that, you go, am I faking it? Do I really know this genre? But I found a hook and a way into it, and then really liked it and liked the ideas behind it. I knew where I was going. I knew what it was about in the long run, what the main characters were going through. It felt like it worked. Got it to a producer, so it's like it started to get up on its feet, and then couldn't cast it. And I was told, yeah, this is going to be cast contingent.
Got it.
So that lasted a while, and then it's all right, fly away.
Any advice for anyone out there listening going, I got an idea?
Learn the world, look at what gets made, read about how shows get done. Honestly, know if you're good. You hear from people going, I've got an idea for a show. Yeah, idea doesn't mean a damn thing. It's you have to write it. You have to execute it. You either put it on paper or you hook up with a writer to do that. But, I've got everybody in the world says I've got a great idea for a TV show. It's really how you do it. I mean, there's this show on, where is it? It's called The Bear.
Yep.
At a restaurant in Chicago. I worked in a restaurant years ago, so I can relate, but I heard about it, watched one episode, and damn, just devoured the rest of them. Thought it was so good. Can't wait to see what they do next.
Yeah, I hear great things about that one.
Yeah, but yet I think Kitchen Confidential, Anthony Bourdain, people tried to turn that into something, didn't fly. So it's who does it and when, with what idea, with what casting. That's what I mean. Everything is execution. I've got, I worked in a restaurant, and boy, it's so wacky, and there are a bunch of characters and everybody's funny. And so write that. Yeah, it doesn't quite go down that way.
Right. You have to create the right set of characters. And
yes,
that's why one of the things I love about the Orville, that
I
think Seth MacFarlane created like all these different characters, and they all work together. And that's, I think, one of the things that makes the show so great.
And he got to indulge his love of Star Trek.
Yes. And we talked a little bit about, certain topics that aren't flying these days, but science fiction is a way to tackle those things. And he actually does that, like every heavy topic you can think of.
Yes.
The beauty of always been of science fiction, right? They can mask things. So when people are watching it, they just think they're watching about these two colored aliens.
Exactly.
Oh, man. You've had an amazing career, and I thank you so much for sharing some of the stories. I'm sure we just scratched the surface, but I appreciate you sharing them with me.
Absolutely. And I'm sure when we're done, I'll think of a show that didn't come out form, but yet found its voice. So I will call you back.
I will look forward to that. You also are an author, and you've written a bunch of books.
Yeah. Well, that one about TV, which was like 20 years ago. And then because I'd studied philosophy of religion, I wrote a book called Deconstructing God, which was my aborted master's thesis, delayed by 30 years, just a subject I had to write about. And then when Sarah Palin hit, it got me thinking about what was going on in the country, and ended up writing a book called Welcome to Dumbfuckistan. And that started thinking in 2008, started writing while I was on another show for 5 years, and put it out in 2016. But it was something I'd noticed in the country, just the dumbing down of it. And turns out she was just the beta version. So after the 2016 election, I could not believe what had just happened. So I wrote a book called Freak Out, because I had been writing for this website about during the election, took a lot of articles and put them together. Basically, it's what the hell just happened. And then a few years into the Trump presidency, had to just write more. So wrote this book called Death to America. Basically, that we'd done this to ourselves. I thought I was done writing on this subject, but I had started another book, got a few hundred pages in, but this can't escape it. So I've started another one, and I'll put it out when it's done. When you get seized by something, it's like, it won't shut up. You figure, well, then I'm going to try to write this. That's been the passion project for the moment.
I love how you always follow whatever you love, and that's where you kind of dive into.
Yeah. I mean, it's usually you get the energy to write something when it won't shut up, and it's just keeps talking and begging you, what about this? What about this? What about this? And you go, okay, I'm going to start putting this down and see if it works.
Ian, thank you so much.
Sure, my pleasure.
I had a really good time talking with you.
Me too. Fun to talk about.
All right. That was Ian Gurvitz. So many great stories. He's done so many cool things. Check out his book, Hello, Lied the Agent, and Other Bullshit You Hear as a Hollywood TV Writer. Ian also has a bunch of other political books that might interest you. All the links are in the show notes. You can check those out. Well, time flies, does it not? Here we are at the end. One more special thank you to my guest, Ian Gurvitz. And of course, a huge thank you to all of you for coming back week after week. It means the world to me, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Classic Conversations. If you like what you heard, don't be shy and give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. Also, why not go ahead and tell all your friends about the show? You strike us as the kind of person that people listen to. Thanks in advance for spreading the word, and we'll catch you next time on Classic Conversations.